We, of course, have Tanner's pick of the week, that being the 1995 film Se7en, maybe even Se7en, depending on how you want to say it.
No.
Right. Se7en is the story of two cops. You got the one who's too old for this shit, and the young gun who's ready to come. They are investigating a series of murders based around the 7 deadly sins, and then they find Kevin Spacey, and they kill him. The end. Fun fact, originally, Denzel Washington turned down the role of Detective Mills because he thought the film was too dark and evil. Oh. He later regretted this upon seeing the movie.
That makes sense. You know, I'm not gonna say I called it, but you know, I think it's pretty ironic that last week I was talking about the 7 deadly sins and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then we watch a movie that actually has the 7 deadly sins depicted in it. I think I'm fucking goated for that. Anyway, you guys talk about the movie. I want to hear it.
That is a fun coincidence. Speaking on that fun fact, I'm kind of glad it turned out the way it did. It would be interesting to see what Denzel would have done with that role, but I really liked Brad Pitt's character in this. Wait. And overall, the acting's just really good. Like, both Brad Pitt and... Why are you looking at me like that, Dylan?
Denzel Washington was supposed to play Brad Pitt's character?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Oh,
I get that you don't remember the names of any of the characters, but
I zoned
out,
dude. I thought
he's black, so he was going to be the black one.
In fairness, I also thought that he was going to replace Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
See, I'm pretty sure I wrote down this fun fact. I'm like, I probably should specify Brad Pitt's character, but I know these fuckers. Anyway, Morgan Freeman, great performance. Brad Pitt, great performance. Kevin Spacey, we don't get a ton of him, and I've always heard that Kevin Spacey is an excellent actor and also a child rapist, but I just don't... I mean, he was good while he was there, but I would need to see more of him to really have a strong opinion.
We literally saw Do the Right Thing.
You're like barely a fucking character in this movie. We saw the scene of him in the backseat of the car, and that was basically all we really got from him.
Yeah. If we had more time with him, I could probably form a better opinion, or even just like give him a really intense interrogation sequence or something. But it's an intriguing and well done story. Unfortunately, and it may have started with this movie. I have seen the crimes but the 7 deadly sins thing many a time in other movies and TV shows.
Oh, so you've seen that, but you haven't seen Thing Turns Out to Be Hell. Ooh, isn't it scary?
No. Yeah, solid performances. I'll save my complaint until after you guys have said some stuff, because it's going to be a bit of a debate, I think.
Oh.
I guess I'll glaze this movie. I liked it. I think this is a very solid film. I agree with basically everything Tanner said. Actually, one of the aspects of it I liked a lot is throughout a lot of the movie, Brad Pitt's really fucking impulsive. He's brash. He's not like a super nice guy. And it can be kind of annoying. Like, I definitely wasn't a huge fan of his character early on. But after the ending of the movie, retroactively, I think it improves it a lot, just because it kind of turns it into like more of like a character study on these people rather than like trying to solve a mystery, which they never really had much of a chance with anyways. And, you know, in the end, it didn't even matter. But the guy fucking revealing himself, it turns into more of like watching these characters and trying to like reflect on maybe what the guy's motives were in the first place, which I think is quite cool personally. I just think it's an interesting concept. I agree with Tanner though. This is an insanely overdone trope.
Yeah.
I don't know if it started it. It probably didn't.
No, I highly doubt it.
95 seems way too late for that to be the case, but like I don't know for sure.
I can't think of an example of it prior, but I still think it's
Dante's
well
Inferno,
done.
But like
yeah. I think it's a good movie. I enjoyed it. I like the characters. I think the world building was interesting. I do like the antagonists at the end. I really like those final scenes. I think they're very interesting and well done. I just like the movie. I enjoyed the movie.
You don't hear that very often.
By the way, guys, speaking of impulsive, like Jackson said previously, I fucking forgot to mention I liked Brian Zimmer's score in the Simpsons movie, okay? I said it.
Okay.
Fuck you.
Got him. I mean, I don't know. I don't have anything crazy to say about this movie. I agree. I really enjoyed all the performances. Everything was super solid. I thought the movie was paced fairly well. Even in the slow moments, you know, there was still some build-up. You know, I think that just kind of goes hand in hand when you have murder mystery going on. It's really difficult when working with a criminal who works from the shadows like this character did, they even threw that that bit in the center where they show up to this apartment and you're like, oh well, surely it's not this easy. Like, this can't be the person they're looking for. Like, they're gonna think it's a guy, they're gonna break in the door, it's another criminal but not the guy they're looking for, and then it turns into, oh yeah, this is actually the guy, and he almost kills one of the main characters, but of course they don't do that because plot armor. Well, that, and he was trying to fulfill the rest of his masterpiece, quote unquote, I guess, if you would say that. But another thing that movies like this do too is it has disregard for the audience's feelings. Like, of course, nobody wants to see murders, and some of these murders are performed in very gruesome ways, and especially the ending. Like, I had a really strong feeling just based on the interaction that he had with the near-death experience with Brad Pitt, and then just the long drawn-out scene is like, oh, I'm really looking forward to this one. I think you'll like it too. And I already had that narrative in my head. I was like, oh, he did something with his wife. And even the part where oh, there's a dead dog on the road, I'm like, dude, that's one of his fucking dogs. Like, they're laying out the red carpet for the scene that's playing in my mind already.
Was that one of his dogs?
I don't think it was confirmed, but I think it could be implied that it was one of his dogs.
I think it was just some random fucking dog, personally.
I mean,
That'd
it could
be interesting if it was, though.
Yeah.
I think with the because the fact that it's implicated and very heavily implicated that his wife's head is in the box.
Well, yeah, but when the fuck? I think that would be a neat idea if it was one of his dogs, but when would he have brought it there? Because he murdered the wife that day.
But he got away with a lot of weird shit this whole movie. I think getting a dead dog in the middle of nowhere isn't hard, to be completely honest. But yeah, no, solid performances, solid plot, really good pacing. I don't know anything about cinematography, so I'm not even gonna try with that. Like Jackson, I did really enjoy this movie.
Actually, on the topic of real quick here for complaints with this film, the sound mixing was not fantastic, especially during early parts of the film.
Oh my god, yeah.
Fucking impossible to hear what they were saying.
I'm really glad you brought that up. That was actually one of my main points I was going to bring up during our discussion, so you guys could be proud of me for recognizing using correct terms, but now Nico has it. Now I'm sad.
That could just be a bad rip, maybe?
Maybe.
I don't think so.
It was fucking unlistenable, though. Especially, the most standout... there's plenty of scenes, but the biggest standout one was when they were doing the fucking gluttony case, and they're walking around that building, and you just couldn't hear a word these fuckers were saying.
Yeah, it kind of boiled down to, it sounds like they're too far away from the microphone, or there cannot be any other external noise going on, or else you cannot hear our main characters talking, and it was so hard to watch, and I'm like, if this was intentional, it wasn't a good call. If it was just bad mixing, that's kind of still on the production studio, so either way, but yeah, that was...
Did you turn subtitles on?
I know that it can be a big problem for films where most of the time, the mixing and stuff, they're made for, the theatrical release. So, if you watch it in theaters, it'll sound totally fine. But then, they don't always do the best job of, actually cleaning that stuff up for, your own home listening experience, which can definitely lead to, the biggest problem a lot of people will notice generally is where it's the music is so loud, but then during the normal scenes, they talk so quiet. So, sometimes they don't do the best job of fixing that sort of stuff later.
Yeah. I guess I'll do my big complaint.
I think he was it's not wrathful if it was justified the way it was.
No,
okay.
No, not even close. My problem is with the ending, and it's because the ending to me feels inconsistent with the setup. And what I mean by that is, it's 7 murders, 7 deadly sins. And the first 5 murders we see is that it is him murdering someone who embodies that trait. But then with the last ones, it's the leftover ones are envy and wrath.
Right.
And so he kills the wife, but he kills the wife because he himself is envious, which, fine,
him
but
getting killed is supposed to be the envy.
Sure.
Okay.
But that still leaves the wife doesn't represent anything. And he turned someone into wrath, but they didn't die.
Well, I think he was just trying to solidify him as wrath. But no, I see what you're saying. I think I'm
saying, so because again, what was set up was each body represents one of them. What does the wife represent?
She represents a means to an end.
But you see what I'm saying? That seems inconsistent with how he set up the first 5. And maybe what that is it's like, oh, because they showed up at his home, he had to panic and like not execute his plan like perfectly or whatever. I can grant you that, but
I think it could be that, but also maybe I'm reaching here and thinking a bit too deeply into it. But also, he is just a fucking psychopath, and I think you could just imply that he's like, you know, he thinks he's on some fucking mission from God or something to do this, like, retribution. We don't even really know why he picked fucking Brad Pitt in the first place to, like, be his, like, target in the end. Maybe he just picked it because they're the ones that were the closest to his tail on the case, and he was like, oh yeah, that'd be a good one, after stalking them or something. I don't fucking know. I think he's just some fucking crazy person, and he's just hot on some trail, and it's like, this is a cool idea.
you could be right there, but that's not a very satisfying answer.
Yeah, I mean, I see this from both ends, to be completely fair. I do remember thinking that when I witnessed it. I was like, hold on a second. So these other 5 murders, you know, they were, like you were saying, they are the embodiment of the deadly sins. I understand where he's getting at, where if he was then murdered, he would be deemed envious, but that doesn't necessarily follow the train of thought, because he's just creating that narrative in his own mind to become envy because his plans were altered. Some could see it as subverting expectations, which in most cases, it could be good or bad. I was trying to justify it in my head. I think it was a fine change of pace, but I did think it was a bit of a stone in the pond, is one is to say, where it created...
I feel like you can just take his justification for being envy at face value. Like, he said he embodies envy because he wants, like, a normal life, and he had one. He was envious of that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was really... I think it was established via the plot that he was murdering the people that embodied sin. I don't think it was ever implied that they had to be murdered, is the thing. And he was just saying...
That's just what he was doing. He fucking killed 5 people, so you can kind of, put the pieces together.
But, like Jackson was saying, he's a fucking psychopath who really knows what he was thinking. And, he probably just did a switch of pace because he wanted to and because it was most convenient for him to complete his quote-unquote masterpiece. So, who really knows?
I think my complaint stands.
Right. We're all entitled to our opinions.
I agree with what you're saying, Tanner, but I don't really think it's that big of a point. At least,
I mean, it's not like dragging it, like, into the B tier or anything.
Right. It's dragging it into the D tier, in fact. Anyway, does anybody else really have anything impactful to say besides Jackson after we give it a letter rating?
I do like a little bit more insight into the police shenanigans stuff. I like seeing detective work. I think it's interesting learning more about how these things work, assuming that this is actually realistic in any regard and not just like movie magic. Specifically what I'm talking about is like the connections through like the library thing. I could see that actually being a legitimate thing. I'm not sure how valid it actually is. That and then the fucking way they handled the escortee to his location, I think was also pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
Things like that. There's a lot of little tiny bits in this movie I enjoyed.
Yeah, I like how they made what could be seen as boring not so boring in this movie.
True.
Ranks?
Yeah, I guess so. Jackson, I'm assuming you're gonna be the highest on this one. Where are you putting it?
I gave it a flat A.
Flat A. I'm close. I'm like an A- for it.
Dude, I also gave it an A-.
Holy smokes, Nico, you're a gosh darn liar. You better apologize to the crowd right now. I gave this movie an A+.
Whoa.
Guys, and unsurprisingly, an A+, an A, and 2 A- landed at an A. Can you believe it?
I can't.